Welcome into a pre-draft show of the Undercovers podcast. I'm Paul alongside Connor and Ben as we are every week. Today marks 3 days until the NFL draft. 3 more days before we can inhale and exhale on whom the Bills will pick at 28, possibly historic trade up to 9, or maybe the news comes out we're trading for Brandon Ayuk and we don't have to worry about it. But for right now, we have to think a historic Brandon Ayuk trade doesn't happen. So we're going to make your lives easier when it comes to draft night. We're going to make 3 different draft boards for you tonight. I'm going to have a draft board. Ben's going to have a draft board. Connor's going to have a draft board. We're going to make your lives easier. So when you are into your third beer and you can't remember who's on the clock, and then here comes the Bills, you can have your handy dandy sheet right next to you and the Bills on whom the Bills should pick, and then you can scream about it later.
Yeah, and it's, a prominent show because tonight is our final pre-draft show. We've, done so many, between having Dean on, doing all those fun mock drafts. So by the next time we have our podcast, we'll be recapping the Bills draft haul so we could see, either how smart we were by predicting how many players we would draft correctly, or B, how dumb we are when none of our predictions are anywhere close to what actually happened. But I'm excited to do the big board. Yeah, that is the fun part of the draft.
With
I think last year I only got like 2 of the total
you
players
give me the lottery numbers.
Right? I mean, one way or the other, last year I selected Dorian Williams and as well as Osiris Torrance a couple times. So those were like the 2 players I got right. I didn't get Kincaid right because in every simulator I did, he was long gone by that pick. But I still actually mocked tight end a couple times. Either it was Luke Musgrave or usually Darnell Washington. I don't know. I really like Darnell Washington, but he's just really more of a blocking tight end. So I'll take the L there. But I mean, I did get the tight end part right, and I mean, I'm glad we went with Kincaid. That was just an awesome pick. So hopefully we have another Kincaid like pick in the first round this year.
Man.
Is it just because we like the Dalton Kincaid pick, or was it more just because we can just stick the middle finger to Skip Bayless again?
Well, yeah, I mean, if we could trade up ahead of Dallas and take like someone that they like who's a premier receiver and Skip has another meltdown, I'm all for it.
Oh man, that would be hilarious.
So with receiver on everyone's mind, obviously I'm going to predict that most of our top few picks here are going to probably be redundant on receiver, which makes sense because, the Bills need the wide receiver. So let's kind of go into our first, into the big board here. And let's talk about, the first player that you feel like the Bills should select, or like it's the most priority pick the Bills should have on their big board coming on Thursday.
Oh man, you're gonna make me rack my brain here, Paul.
I should have just selected somebody.
I'll go first. I got my list all nice in front of me, so I could just read off there. But it might be boring to some. To others, it's a player they really want. And to be honest, I've kind of gone back and forth on this player myself. But just looking at his traits and upside, I think if you get him to Buffalo, he'd be a home run. So this is my big board. Full disclosure, it's kind of the more realistic route. Unfortunately, there's no Neighbors or Harrison as much as I want either player. Number 1, I'm going with Brian Thomas Jr. because I think those traits with Josh Allen could be so much fun. You get a player with like Jalen Waddle like speed for Josh to throw it over the top to, and he can moss players too because he's like 6'4" and has great jump ball ability. Like I just feel like that would be a really fun player to add to this offense. I mean, it's obviously the biggest need right now, in my opinion, is that alpha number 1 receiver. So I'm going with Brian Thomas Jr.
Ooh, yeah. That is a choice because that's what I feel like everybody's choice is at this point. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah, I might
predict.
be a little boring, but
Well, I mean, no, that's fairly accurate. So I guess you're gonna make me be the one to go all wild and insane with my first player on my big board. And how on brand for me, Romo Dunze. Let's figure out how to make this work, Brandon Bean. Make
oh
that
man,
Chicago, make that call to well, most of my mock drafts make that
Atlanta
call.
may not even have their pick.
Oh yeah, you know what? You're right
Oh,
about the whole
man.
tampering issue. Imagine if
Imagine they
they lose
lose
that
pick
first
number
round
8.
pick.
Yeah. And then I think it's even more of a priority to make that trade with Chicago because then you got the Jets who would then pick at 9. And no
Mhm.
way do I want to let them add Roma Dunze with Garrett Wilson and
Oh
Aaron
please.
Rodgers and Brees Hall. Like,
Oh please. If they add Romo Dunze when they have such glaring needs on their offensive line, they're crazy. Do they want
yeah,
Aaron Rodgers to
but
last 45 seconds again?
I know, but still, like if they had a Dunze, like even if Aaron Rodgers doesn't last, whoever's the quarterback going forward has 2 premier wide receivers on the outside for the
That is
next
true.
couple of years. Like Garrett Wilson and Odunze would be a very good duo.
Oh, for sure. Let's
And if they can somehow patch the offensive line together, like I mean, even if they take offensive line the next years, I don't know. Like, but I just don't want him to go to the Jets because I mean, I think the Bill, like you mentioned, like that's if you can add a Dunze to the Bills, I think they're Super Bowl contenders, and I think they might be borderline contenders with Thomas. But I think if you draft Thomas, in order to be contenders, you need to kind of hit it out of the park with the rest of your picks, kind of how the Chiefs did it the last couple years, in their Super Bowl runs. I mean, they've got great production from their rookie players. So
Mhm.
the Bills, I mean, you can, draft the Thomas Jr. And I don't know if it quite puts you over the top, but I think Odunze definitely does.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He absolutely would take this offense and just skyrocket it to another level. Because you said it a second ago, Paul. Jalen Waddle likes speed. You know what he would have that Jalen Waddle doesn't have? A quarterback that could actually hit him on a deep route.
Right?
So just think about that for a moment. We have a very good opportunity. I'm late to the party, but hey, hi Lauren. We were
Hey,
just
Lauren.
about to we were just talking
I
about
was
Roma
just about to give
Dunze.
you my top player on my big board. That's where we're at, you know?
All right.
My top
Finish
player
this up,
is
Paul.
exactly just like Connor's. It's Roman Dunze. Like
Hey,
like, just imagine Rome Ndunze on the Buffalo Bills. Like, if Brandon Bean can
disgusting.
make the deal work for the Bills and for who's he's trading with,
Right.
most likely it's the Chicago Bears. I think the Bears, if you sweeten the deal just a little bit, the Bears are going to say, "Hey, this is a good deal. We're going to swap because there's enough. Still going to be enough wide receivers later in the draft
Mhm.
for the Bills for the Chicago Bears to take to complement whom the number one pick is going to be in
I
Caleb
mean, they
Williams."
already have a number one receiver in
True.
DJ Moore, so it's not like they really need to get that true number
Exactly.
one. Like they can just find I mean, they could even take McConkey at pick 28
Okay.
and have a
He's
very
looking
good
good.
receiving core.
That would be a very Chicago-like pick too. Let's just be completely
I
honest.
mean, it wouldn't be a bad pick though. That guy gets open. They have Moore and Allen working the outsides. You
Yeah,
put McConkey in the slot. You have Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift. Like that, you could be cooking with something there if you're Chicago.
yeah, Bears could be a disgusting team. In every one of the mock drafts I did, and like the one that I'm writing about right now, when I trade with Chicago, I'm like, yeah, we'll give you pick 28. they could take a guy like Adonai Mitchell there too, or Xavier
Yeah,
Worthy and have a real speedster on that offense. Could you
right.
imagine?
I mean, Troy Franklin, Xavier Leggett. There's some other players. You
Oh,
know.
this is a deep wide receiver class.
Oh, for
This is
sure.
the deepest one I think we've seen in a very long
Oh,
time. This wide
yeah, for
receiver
sure.
class.
It's definitely since 2014 at least.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah, it rivals how good the quarterback class of 2020 was. Like that's
Right.
how good this wide receiver class is. There's so many good options, even all the way down into rounds 3, 4. You could still get wide receivers. I mean, this is the draft for Brandon Beane to acquire real weapons for Josh Allen in the premier rounds. And we
Yeah.
all just thought about it. I mean, Ben's yours was the most realistic. Yeah. Brian Thomas Jr. somewhere around the 28 range, if he even goes there. You might have to trade up just a little bit to get him, but
I guess
all
it
an
just
eye
kind
on
of
Rome
brings up
Odunze.
the question, do you want that Roma Dunze or would you like a Brian Thomas Jr. and then
Oh,
another player in the second round, maybe like a Ricky
right.
Pearsall or a McMillan to go on top of that Brian Thomas Jr. It's kind of like you could maybe get multiple weapons or you could get that premier weapon.
Mhm.
But
I would prefer multiple weapons if you ask me. I
and
mean,
and to be honest, I've kind of said recently that I wanted to go kind of like the way the Green Bay Packers have went with their wide receiving core, where they just have like 4 to 5 really good options without really
mhm,
having a true number one. They do have that one guy on the outside with size and speed in Christian Watson who can beat you downfield, and that's why I feel like if you get Brian Thomas, you can get him to fill that role, and then you can just have 3 other guys who can just do a lot and you can move around. So
exactly,
that's
exactly.
kind of how I am inclined right now personally, is to just go receiver in the first 2 picks, and then I mean, you could even move up into the third round if a defensive player you like starts to slide. But moving on in my personal big board for my number 2 player, this is if he's there and it does fill a need. This is if they don't go wide receiver, it's Jared Verse. Um, I
Oh, man,
mean, he
Jared
could
Verse, my
arguably be
guy.
ranked above Brian Thomas Jr. just as an overall prospect, but
Mhm.
I mean, if you want to add a premier edge rusher to go across from Rousseau, I mean, can you imagine, the havoc you could wreak on opposing offensive lines between Ed Oliver. You could even put Rousseau on the inside and then rush Epinesa and Verse from the outside, and you don't even need the blitz, and you could
Disgusting.
just absolutely wreck, the pockets of opposing quarterbacks. Like,
Mhm. Like Jared
I mean,
Verse
let's
did
be
to
honest.
everybody
This
in
is
the
most
ACC.
like 100%, and this is most likely Von's last year. And you know how the Bills like that rotation, and you lost 11 and a half sacks or 10 and a half, however much um you had with Leonard Floyd last season when he walked in free agency to San Francisco. So, I mean, that's kind of a need is a guy who can get you some sacks this year. So I don't think you can rely on Von Miller to necessarily give you 10 plus. I mean, maybe he gives you 6 to 8, which I think would be fine for him, just given his age and his injury concerns. But that's, I think, going to be a need, is adding another edge at some point. And if you can add someone like Verse, that could even take the
Mhm.
defense over the top.
Oh, it would. This defense with Jared Verse would be disgusting. You would have to
Oh,
trade
it
up a
would.
lot to get Jared Verse, though. The last couple of times I've seen any kind of projections, he's gone within that around 13 to 16 range, as low as
Right.
20. So you would have to trade up for Jared Verse. But in my opinion, if you're going to trade up for a guy that's not Brian Thomas Jr., get Jared Verse. That defensive front with Verse would just be disgusting. You know, it would be actually, you just made me think of it, Ben. You're the only one that would really see me on this one. But imagine you trade up for Jared Verse and you somehow find a way to also land Braden Fisk.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Yeah.
good Lord. It's game over for offensive lines everywhere. reunite those two like they were at FSU, and it's just game over. Oh my God. Well, because you went with Jared Verse, I guess now it's my turn for a semi-realistic pick at 28. So another player on my big board that isn't a wide receiver, and who could potentially be there at 28 for the Buffalo Bills is Cooper DeJean. I actually would not be opposed to Cooper DeJean in round 1. I know so many people are on this train of no, don't do it. I see you shaking your head, Ben, but I just think that we need to get some depth at the safety position. And I think actually, isn't Cooper DeJean listed? Can't he play both? Because he's listed as a
Yeah, but he's more
quarterback.
corner. That's more
I
of
mean,
a
hey, I would
mean,
rather get a premier talent at cornerback in round 1 than have to ever try to rely on Kyer Elam ever again.
if you do that,
So
I say you package Kyer Elam and your second round pick to move up in the second round.
well, I've already discussed that wholesale, and in my article that I'm writing with my final mock draft, I do package Kyer Elam to move up higher in the second round and to snag a third round pick. So more on that later, but at the moment, Jared versus Cooper DeJean. Paul, hit us again.
I'm going to stay on the wide receiver train
Why?
because
Because
why?
he's a smart
Why?
man.
He is
That's
a
why.
smart man.
I
Okay, yeah,
am
you know what? You're right.
if you my first few players in the draft board is going to be similar. They all compare to what the Bills should do in the first round. It's wide receiver or bust right now, and it's Brian Thomas Jr. number 2.
All right.
Okay.
Just for everything that we've recently talked about with Brian Thomas Jr., you just insert Brian Thomas Jr. onto this team. It's game over with Josh Allen because he can just throw the ball and he's going to catch it. But Brian Thomas Jr., his ability to separate is another important thing to note here. That he can separate right off the line because he's super aggressive. He's aggressive in route running and he's aggressive right off the top of his route.
Sure.
Could that possibly lead to a couple offensive pass interference times? Yes, that might happen early on in the season, but the offensive coordinator and passing game coordinators are going to drill to him that you can't do certain things, and then he's going to turn into ultimate beast mode.
Mm-hmm.
Who's number 3
man.
on your draft board?
This is going to be controversial to
Uh-oh.
probably half the fan base, and if this is the pick, you might get another Josh Allen like meltdown on draft day. But I think I should trust Bean, and you got the traits and the ability, and you just look at I think the potential missed out because of the quarterback play. It's Adonai Mitchell. I know, or Adonai Mitchell, however you say his name.
Okay. That's not
you would be the one to say missed out on the quarterback play too. I like the shot at Texas.
Quinn Ewers, I mean, go and watch the tape. There's a lot of missed opportunities. And I think some of the concerns with Mitchell, you do have to give to Thomas Jr. as well, which is maybe the effort, run blocking, stuff like that. But I think if you're playing with Josh Allen and you're going to be the number 1 target, I think a guy like Mitchell could come in and just absolutely be that number 1 alpha that they need. He's been comped to CD Lamb. He actually is faster than CD Lamb. And if you can just pair him with Josh Allen, he's honestly, if you talk about contested catches and jump balls, I think he's actually a little bit better than Brian Thomas Jr. To me, he plays more physical than Thomas Jr., which is something you might want, considering the Bills play so many physical defensive backs in the AFC between guys like McDuffie, Snead, Cam Taylor-Britt, Sauce Gardner. I mean, even Ramsey, is known to be, very physical, and playing bump and run. So if you get a guy like Mitchell who could beat you downfield and is also physical at the line, I think that's a good match. I know he does have the type 1 diabetes concern, but Mark Andrews has had a pretty good career, and he has type 1 diabetes. So I trust the Bills, medical staff and whatever, their nutrition team, to get him in the right shape. I mean, you just look at the transformation that AJ Epinesa underwent, to kind of get to the perfect, playing weight, and now he's a freaking beast. So I trust the Bills if they pick AD Mitchell.
I would not be opposed. I would really not be
Good.
opposed if we had him at 28. But back to me now, and I'm
Yeah.
staying with defense. A guy that I've had a few conversations with fellow Bills fans about, and that's Chop Robinson. This guy, I've been watching a
Okay.
little bit more tape. He
I
could
don't
come off
know.
the edge and absolutely annihilate people. He did at Penn State for a while, and he's right around the
Have you looked
27.
at his career numbers? He only has like 6 career sacks. Like, that's a little concerning. If you,
Yeah, but then again, the thing about some of it's looking at stats, from the collegiate level. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I
some
know
people
it
can
can
have very
kind of
minimal
be.
stats and translate really well into the NFL. I mean, that's just the luck of the draft. It's a crapshoot. So the whole thing with Chop is I have a feeling he could be a very huge asset because we have to build up depth on defense and get younger on defense. Because I think you were the one that said it, Ben. Von Miller is probably going
Yeah.
to retire after he might retire, he might not retire after this season. You
Either
have to
way, I
prepare
don't
for
think
that.
he's a Bill next year.
Maybe, maybe not, but he's still on my board of I would like to get this guy if he's there. And I
Okay.
trust Brandon Bean to have done the homework on him if they get him.
I mean,
So,
I will say you have the Penn State connection with
You do.
Terry Pagula.
you
Him
know
being
what?
a
Yeah,
Penn
you're
State
right.
alum, so he goes to a lot of Penn State games. So I guess
Maybe.
I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. But Paul, who's your number 3? Are you sticking with the receiver
Oh,
theme?
sure.
All
My
Oh my
right,
top,
God.
perfect. I love
they
it. I
all
love it.
relate,
I
and
love it too.
it's going to be AD Mitchell.
All
Like,
right,
if
perfect. Me and Paul are kind of in the same wavelength with our receiver rankings right now. I like it.
my top 3 wide receivers, shifted the last few months. It started, with Xavier Worthy. He kind of fell off a little bit,
Yeah,
but Roman Dunze, Brian Thomas Jr., AD Mitchell, those are the top 3, no debate for the Buffalo Bills.
I agree. I mean, I'm not. You're
They're
not.
going to
I'm
be
not going to
pure
disagree.
difference makers.
The only one I could say you could rank above would be Marvin Harrison Jr., but I think that's a pipe dream.
What about Malik Neighbors?
Him too.
Can't forget both of
If
them.
you're thinking about the draft realistically, Marvin Harrison Jr. and then it's Malik Neighbors, and then you see how the draft falls out. Because
Sure.
if the draft falls a certain way, Brian Thomas, you might not even have to trade up for Brian Thomas Jr. He just fall to you. And that would be a luxury for the Buffalo Bills not to have to give up one other pick to go get a Brian Thomas Jr. And we will have all of our other picks to put in the other pieces.
Sure.
But one thing about AD Mitchell, he's been criticized for his character, and I'm not buying the character issues thing here, because go back to when Texas and Washington were playing in the college football playoff. AD Mitchell did have that one instant where he said he wanted the football, but guess what AD Mitchell did the next play? He scored a
Caught it.
touchdown to bring
I mean, if
Texas
you
back
look at
into the football game.
his college stats, he scored in every single postseason game he's played in, including 3 college football playoff semifinals and 2 national title games. So all that
That's
guy
wild.
does is score in big moments. I mean, we saw
But
a couple former Bills receiver who shall not be named, fall short last couple seasons. So
Oh
I
man.
think you get a guy
Cook.
like Mitchell, to come in to make the big plays, at the big moments.
Mm-hmm.
big play, big moments, clutch dude. I mean, I heard one person say he's a silent assassin. He's not going to be the one who's going to be asking for the football. He's going to show it to you on the football field. And that's
Oh yeah.
something that I really like about AD Mitchell, especially
Mm-hmm.
even though being what I think he's 6'2", he still has speed. Great, he can play great on the outside. He's a guy that I really, really enjoy watching tape on with Texas, and he'd be just the perfect Josh Allen type wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. Ben, who you have at 4?
Well, I know I threw the curveball in at number 2 with defense, but I'm sticking with my stick as well,
Uh-oh.
and kind of the same wavelength as you, Paul, is Xavier Legette. He's
Oh.
another alpha receiver type, 6'1", great ball skills, contested catchability, and he's a 4.39 guy. So he can run away from you. He shows some big playability, with his yak for South Carolina. And honestly, he didn't get that much opportunities because he had Spencer Rattler at quarterback with a subpar O-line. So if you get him, to Buffalo, he's got Josh Allen throwing him the ball. I think he'll be a great weapon. So I got Legette as my number 4.
Oh. Okay.
The conflicting thing with Xavier Legette is, where does he actually go? Because
Sure.
some people say he's a late first rounder, but being that late, he really didn't produce until his final season of at South Carolina, and could bring questions, and that could lower his draft stock
Sure.
to maybe mid-second round.
I don't
But
know if
some
you've
guys,
seen that interview of him, but he said he's visited with Carolina like 4 or 5 times now.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if he makes it
That
past
yeah.
30, pick number 33. And I agree with Lauren. We got to save him
Yeah,
from
save him.
Carolina.
Save Legette from the horror that is Carolina.
but I like to say that I would like a Xavier Legette as a good trade down. Just say Bills stay at 28, and then BTJ, AD Mitchell, and Roma Dunze are all off the board. That's where I would say to tell Bean, you probably trade down. That's the only instance where I see the Bills to trade down.
Yeah,
Is
but
to
I don't
trade
know if
down,
you'll be
then
able to
you go
get
get
like
Legette.
I don't know if you can get Leggett with a trade down because Kansas City needs a receiver, with Rasheed Rice playing GTA in real life. And then you got Carolina, as I mentioned previously, sitting at pick 33. So there's really no sweet spot to move down, in my opinion, because maybe Detroit even takes a weapon too. Because they don't have that many holes. What if they just, say, let's go sicko mode and add Xavier Legette with Sam Laporta, Jameer Gibbs, Jameson Williams, and Amon-Ra St. Brown?
God,
Like,
that would be disgusting.
exactly. Like, I think if you want to Legette, you might just need to take him at pick 28.
True.
Yeah, if you really wanted Legette that bad, you have to take him at 28. That's something that I would trust Beat about. If we took Legette at 28, I would not be unhappy. I would be like, all right, let's cook. All right. My turn again. I know I've been the one that's like all over the place because if any of you have ever heard
You're
the
throwing the
mantra,
Sean McDermott go defense mode hat.
I mean, defense wins championships. I grew up watching very elite defenses, and
So
I'm
who's
sticking
number
with
4?
defense
Defense?
yet again. And this time I'm going to go Jared Verse. So,
So you have Chop Robinson over Jared Verse,
well,
Connor.
it's about realistically where
Okay,
they'd go.
I get it.
Yeah, realistically, Jared Verse is so much better than Chop Robinson, but you wouldn't have to trade up for Chop Robinson. You would have to trade up for Jared Verse, which is why in
Yeah,
this
that's
big
true.
board I have put Chop above Jared Verse. That's the only reason why. Jared Verse is just a wrecking ball. And you've already said it at length, Ben. He is a human wrecking ball. So I will not say much more. Braden Fisk, Fabian Lovett, and all that, and that elite defense, best in the country defense, don't at me. Man, we could have gone places, but
Yeah.
I'm sticking with Jared Verse right there on my big board. Paul, what do you got? If this is another wide receiver, I swear.
Probably
Have some
is.
variety.
I want to bring you some variety because
Okay.
this is where kind of like my draft board starts getting away from the first round and starts thinking about the plan after the first round, after 28. At number 4 on my big board, I got Cole Bishop, the safety out of
Wow.
Utah.
Oh, that's
I
awfully.
think
Wow. All right.
catch everyone's by surprise. It wasn't expecting that reaction, but I think Cole Bishop is a guy that the Bills should get.
Hmm.
He's a safety. I believe he's more of a safety, but he's kind of like the DeJean type player where I think he had some snaps at corner. So he's the guy that the Bills would like to use in the versatile role
Sure.
where he would definitely be your starting safety if not by midseason. He's the starting safety for the future. I mean, whether if he's not getting snaps early on in the season, he's going to take over that starting safety role by midseason. So I think Cole Bishop here, you know, whether it's you take your BTJ in the first round, and then you draft your future safety in the second round. That's kind of my thinking, and that's how kind of has been my brain's been thinking. Obviously, receiver would be great too, but Cole Bishop would be a great guy to start the future of your defensive backs.
I would love Cole Bishop in the later rounds. So would Miami. And that's the big issue is that you'd have to make sure that if you wanted him, you better jump him before Miami gets their chance because they like him too. All right, Ben, 5th player. Let's go. Let's hear it.
So, to the surprise of all of you, I'm going with another wide receiver,
Oh my
and
God.
this time I'm going with Xavier Worthy. This might be a
Oh, the
shocker to
speed
some
guy.
people, but yeah, you want to add some speed to the offense. I know you might still need to add a true X at some point. Maybe you go with Johnny Wilson, to match uh Worthy speed, but I think that
Love my
that
guy
would just
Johnny.
be a home run hit, to get the fastest guy in football on your team. Literally, he's faster than Hill, faster than Waddle. Bring him to Buffalo and let's work.
Oh yeah. No longer the track team offense in Miami. Now it's in Buffalo. All right.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to go back and now I'm going to circle back to wide receiver. I know my only
Oh,
wide receiver on
finally.
my big board was Romo Dunze. So now I'm going to go with the second wide receiver of my personal choice, and that would have been Brian Thomas Jr. I love the guy. I love the tape. And he's in a realistic range for the Bills. I mean, you probably have to trade up a little bit, but you wouldn't have to trade up a lot to get Brian Thomas Jr.
For
The
sure.
amount, the skill set he could bring to this offense would be phenomenal. So moving on, hit us, Paul.
All right, so we're at number 5. I'm gonna. This might be against the philosophy of this draft, but I
Oh,
want to stick with defense for here because
Okay.
you gotta go back to what the Bills might do in the first round and how they're going to fill out the rest of their draft. I'm going to take on the defensive line Rook Orohoro out of Clemson. I think
Okay.
he will solidify the Bills' defensive line. I believe he's a defensive tackle, so he would fit in the next role for the defensive line. So I really feel like, if you're going to think about this real on a interesting, realistic standpoint, wide receiver, defense, kind of like the back and forth of offense, defense type of move.
mm-hmm.
My next selection is another receiver, and this is if all the other guys are off the board, or maybe if we possibly get one of the other guys. You either do a trade up. I think this is maybe another sweet spot to trade down, maybe like 8 selections or so. You pick up another
Oh,
third round pick, and then you take Troy Franklin, who has some
oh,
truly
yeah.
nasty releases at the line of scrimmage. He has game breaking speed, elite run after the catch ability. I mean, he was one of the top weapons and one of the best offenses in college football. I mean, just look at his receiving numbers last year. They're absolutely insane. So get another speedster to the offense in Troy Franklin.
Oh, yes. I have mocked Troy Franklin so many times in draft boards. I've traded into the second round, higher into the second round to get Troy Franklin to pair with Romo Dunze. But moving on, I'm about to freaking blow all your minds. You know what I think? Jackson Powers Johnson would look really good in a Bills uniform.
I don't hate that actually. I mean,
I
I've
say
mocked
Me
that
him a
either.
couple times.
I say this for a few different reasons. I like his tape. I like the idea of having more offensive depth, but I like having a guy that Miami really wants and going, nope, he's ours. The
Right,
idea of depth at one of the most important positions in all of football, outside of quarterback, obviously, is huge. Protect
right.
Josh Allen at all
I
costs.
mean, and imagine how good the O line would be with you put JPJ at center, Edwards at Torrance at guard, and then
Mhm.
you got Brown and Dawkins, and then you have Lyle Collins as your swing tackle. You still have David Edwards as your sixth offensive lineman. You got Will Clapp as your backup center. Like you got some. I mean, your backup unit is almost better than some of your past lines you've ran out there. So,
Mhm.
I mean, if you could do that, I mean, I think you're in pretty good shape. Yeah, you would want to address receiver early, obviously, but
Mhm.
I mean, if you solidify the O line, I think you're talking about potentially the best offensive line in football, and then you could constantly
Mhm.
win in the trenches, and maybe you could
Exactly.
actually neutralize Chris Jones. I know it's a tough task, but if you have a JPJ pair him with Torrance, I mean, I would actually like that pick.
Let
I
James
would too.
cook, and you would do that with a solid offensive line.
Oh my god! I mean, and Allen would just have enough time to even,
That too.
find Matt Collins on scramble plays,
Haha,
or
yeah, that
Curtis
too.
Samuel and Shakir could both have career seasons.
Exactly.
All
I'm
right,
going back
Paul,
to
let's do number
receiver.
6.
I'm
Cook.
going back to receiver. And this might I had a defensive player at number 6, but I'm like, I need to add another receiver to this board because it would make sense because the Bills could double dip round 1, round 2 at wide receiver. So why not make this receiver Keon Coleman? How
Okay.
about Keon Coleman
Hey,
to the Buffalo Bills? I ran out of
let's
words, that's why
go.
I paused, but Keon Coleman would be another great guy to implement onto this
Mhm,
roster. He's not
mhm.
he didn't perform well at the combine, with the 40 speed, but I don't care about that. He can catch the football, and that's what the Bills need. They need guys to catch the football and go, and he can create so many problems on with opposing defenses. So let's go to 7. Uh Ben, 7.
So, I mean, I like your board, Paul. Ours are actually kind of similar in a way, but to everyone's surprise, I'm sticking with the receiver position. Now give us Lad McConkey if we can't get any of the other guys or to double dip. I love me some Lad McConkey. That guy has
Oh
awesome
god, Lad
tape.
McConkey truther,
He's
take
a
cover.
killer. I mean, I'm a McConkey truther. I'll be honest. That guy is a good football player. I mean, I wouldn't take him as my top receiver, but we need
Oh
wide
no.
receivers. And that guy,
Mhm.
he kind of reminds me of Cole Beasley on steroids. So that was one of Josh's
Okay.
favorite weapons. Give me a bigger, faster, more athletic version of Cole Beasley.
You know what? I wouldn't mind Lad McConkey either. I know Paul's sitting there seething. The steam is coming out of his ears right
I
now.
know.
But all right. So moving on, I am going to also stick at the wide receiver position because this is actually where I was going to slide in Keon Coleman myself. I love Keon. Everybody knows I love Keon. Everybody thinks I'm crazy about my love for Keon Coleman, but no, if we draft Keon Coleman, we're going to be
I'm
very
buying a
happy.
jersey right away.
Oh yeah, yeah, you're gonna. Yeah, well, Ben, we're gonna end up. That'll be the giveaway jersey, and then you and I will probably both be wearing one on the show. So
Right. Next
yeah,
Monday.
I would love Keon Coleman on the Bills so much. Move on, Paul. Hit us.
If we had more show, I would talk about how much the Bills shouldn't draft Lad McConkey, but we don't have enough show for that.
I was about to say, you almost
Maybe
said
we'll
it.
talk about it next week
Mhm.
if it happens. But I want to stay in offense, but it's not going to be wide receiver for number 7. Oh, sorry, this is
Yeah, it is
yeah,
7.
this is 7.
7. Yep, you're
Mhm.
right.
I want to stay in offense, but it's not going to be wide receiver. It's going to be running back.
Okay.
I want to
Oh,
take the Wisconsin running back, Braylon Allen.
Wow.
Add
oh,
a
Trey
wow.
big,
Benson.
bring a big physical guy
I
that
don't hate
who
that though.
also has speed behind James Cook. You have James Cook and that physical running back. You just a 1-2 punch, just boom boom, and then you
Yeah.
have whoever at wide receiver.
Mhm. Wow. I like it. I like it. If we're going to discuss running backs, then I will circle back to you. But for now, Ben, hit us. Where are we at?
Hey,
We are at
This
number
would be 8.
8, and
Yeah.
I
All right.
finally am going with another defensive player.
Wow.
Braden Fisk. It's a position of need. The Bills defensive line coach have had meetings with him, so obviously he's someone on the Bills board.
God, Braden Fisk would be incredible on
Yeah,
the
I
team.
mean, he would be an awesome add to this defensive line. So,
Mhm.
yeah, not really much more to say about Braden Fisk.
You can't get Jared Verse, get the next best thing in Braden Fisk. But hey, why not both, right? All right. So I said I was going to circle back to a running back, and I am. But I'm also going to stick with the flavor of what Ben was just talking about from the same school, and his name is Trey Benson. If there was a way that you traded into the 3rd round and you were able, and Trey Benson was looking on the board right at you, get him. Get him immediately. Could you imagine a backfield with James Cook and Trey Benson? Good Lord. Ben, you know, because you've seen all the Trey Benson tape because we watched all the games. My God, that would just be a disgusting offense, a disgusting backfield. Trey Benson would just be elite.
I wouldn't mind Trey Benson either. I mean,
Yeah,
Allen
you'd
or
have to.
Benson would be the perfect running back behind James Cook.
Hmm.
All right, so for my number 8, I'm going to go back to defense, and I'm going to take Javon Solomon out of Troy.
Interesting.
Very.
I think he's listed as a linebacker, but he can also play a little bit of a he can also
Defensive
run into
line.
the pass
Okay.
rush area. I think if you go back into you think about this in a way kind of like the offensive line, you're just adding more depth to a position that might need the depth later on in the season. And as the season goes on, you're going to need more defensive depth because they're just going to wear out and games get longer and feet get heavier. So add in a guy like a Javon Solomon, I think you can insert him on the edge. You can make him your future edge guy, even if when Von Miller goes out, or you can make him a future depth piece at linebacker.
So my number 9, and I'm actually surprised he's lowest on my board than everyone else's, but
Oh,
I got Keon Coleman as well. I just have a couple other receivers ahead of him, of course, and
yeah.
some defensive players, but get this man to Buffalo. I don't really have much more to say about him. I mean, he's a freaking beast. I mean, we saw it,
Mhm.
Connor, and honestly, I think that injury midseason kind of hampered his production because he probably could have
Yeah.
went off for easily, 1,000+ yards and
Mhm.
maybe even how many touchdowns did he end up with? Like 11, was it? Or
Yeah,
13?
it's somewhere around 11, 13, I believe. But yeah, I mean, if Keon never got injured, we could have been talking about him as one of the premier wide receivers in this draft. Like, I mean, maybe not up there with Neighbors or Odunze, but around the Brian Thomas Jr. range if he never got injured. It's just a shame because Jordan Travis in the quarterback room was the same way. He never
Right.
gets injured. We might be talking about him higher than guys like Bo Nix or Michael Penix.
Penix.
Or Penix, yes. I don't
I love
remember
that
how to pronounce his.
pronunciation.
Well, hey, I
Oh,
didn't remember how to pronounce his name, okay? But so if we're going to move on to number 9, this is a safety because defense wins championships, as I've stated multiple times. This is Tyler Newman out of Minnesota. I know a lot of people are down on the RAS score that Newman has, but I look at scores and I'm like, yeah, CJ Stroud broke every score metric you can think of. They were all like, oh, CJ Stroud had terrible metrics. And then look at what he's done. So I loved the Tyler Newman tape I watched. He's
And you
very
got him over
versatile.
Cole Bishop then, right?
Yes.
Okay,
And it's
interesting.
because you'd have to trade up in the second round because he's projected pretty high. But if you could get Tyler Newman in this Bills backfield, electric. I mean, that would just be a solid get if he was around and the Bills had the opportunity. But that's at 9 because obviously it's a little unrealistic, unrealistic expectations. Jenna.
Okay. Let's get back on
Move
track.
on. Stop laughing. Move on.
All right.
Okay, number 9 now.
All right.
I want to go back to defense. I'm going to stick with defense. It's going to be Marshawn Devonshire, Shin
Who?
out of Marlon. I said his first name wrong. Like
I see I'm not the only one.
Marlon Devonshire Jr., the cornerback out of Pittsburgh.
All
I
right.
think
Yeah, we
he
know
would
how the
be a
Bills
great-
have an affinity for Pitt defensive backs, so I could see it.
Yeah.
It just adds depth to a secondary that you just got to keep adding depth to. I think you can't have enough cornerbacks on your team, so add that guy.
Absolutely.
My 10th
Number 10.
player for the Bills to draft is Cole Bishop.
Cole
There's a
Bishop,
need at
right.
safety. He could play. He's a versatile player. He's very athletic. I think he would be a home run addition to the defensive backfield.
Mm-hmm. Dude, love Cole Bishop. All right. So for my final spot on my big board, and the only reason he's this low is because the odds of getting him are also very, very low. But I think everybody knew where this was going, and that's Johnny Wilson.
Okay.
Johnny Wilson, he's projected around 80 to 100. You'd have to realistically trade up back into the third round to get him, and it'd be a little bit lower in the third round. But if you've listened to me about Johnny Wilson, I've waxed poetic about this guy. 6'7", 235-pound beast that has said on multiple occasions he does not want to switch over to tight end. You would be adding a receiver taller than both Kincaid and Knox onto the Bills. And not only is he physical, but for a guy as big as he is, he's also shifty. He gets in the open field and it's lights out. I wrote an article on him for a reason, and that's because nobody talks about him. I would talk about him even more, but for the sake of time and to hear the rest of Paul's board, let's hit it.
Yeah, and that's a guy
Right.
you don't want to tackle in the open field, especially with the new hip drop tackle rules.
Exactly.
Number 10, I'm going to go back to offense. It's not wide receiver. It's not running back. It's offensive line. His name is Patrick Paul, O-line out of Houston.
I like
didn't
that we
know
have
much about
O-line
him
here.
until I looked him up last week. Just underrated players because that's what we were talking about. And he seems like a guy that the Bills would really like. He has long arms and his ability to block in the B gap and just get up the field and just up the field blocking, something that could really help just something just to help the running game go forward. Even just outside running, develop more of an outside running game, And then that would just really help the depth of the offensive line, because who doesn't like depth anywhere on your team? Because you're
Especially
going to need it later in the season.
yes, you will.
All right.
Also, hold up. We have a little bit of breaking news. It's not us, unfortunately. I wish I
Ah,
was saying it because it was us trading for Brandon Ayuk, but the Kansas City Chiefs have signed Mark Donovan, Brett Veach, and Andy Reid to contract extensions. All of
Okay.
them. Wow.
interesting.
Very,
Alright.
What
very interesting.
about Matt Nagy?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's can they do that too, please?
Lifetime extension, right?
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah, give him a lifetime extension.
All right.
But I just
You
had to
ready for
bring that
this?
up.
Yeah.
Yes, it's bold predictions time.
Oh, it's bold prediction time. One bold prediction that one of us is going to get right on draft night. One of us.
Now
If
watch it be
not,
none of us.
no, I'm not jinxing it. There's
You're
wood right
gonna
here,
jinx it.
knocking on the wood. One of us is going to get a bold prediction right.
All right.
Ben, go first. What is your bold prediction for draft night? I mean, or even the entire draft if you want to make it like that.
I don't know if I want to get too bold or if I want to be realistic. I mean, I guess
Come on,
I
Ben.
can stick with my pre-draft take. Kind of, I've been saying this for a while. Six
Andy Reid, come on.
six quarterbacks will be
for real.
selected in the top 32 picks. There's gonna be 6 quarterbacks in the first round. And
6 quarterbacks.
actually, for the first time ever, I don't think there's ever been a quarterback taken in the top 4 consecutively. Correct? I think it's only happened the top 3, right? I don't think it's been 1,
Yeah,
2,
I
3,
don't think there's
4
been top 4.
because last year they had the opportunity to do so, but Houston traded back up for Will Anderson,
Which was a
and
great move.
that was a
Holy
great move.
crap.
And Will Levis ended up falling to the second round to the surprise of some. So, yeah, I'll say there's 4 quarterbacks in the top 4 picks. I think that's how it's going to fall. I think Minnesota or the Giants, whoever, ends up moving up to number 4 is going to trade with Arizona. It's going to be Williams, Daniels, May McCarthy, or maybe it's Williams McCarthy, May Daniels. It could go a couple different ways. You've seen the
We need
odds for McCarthy shift. I mean, should I go out on a limb and say Washington does something stupid like they normally do, and they draft JJ McCarthy at pick number 2, and
God, that would
then
be hilarious. We need the
the
laughs on
Patriots
draft
get
night.
Drake May, the Patriots get Jaden Daniels, and then the Vikings trade up for Drake May, and Drake May becomes the next Justin Herbert.
Oh God. Don't put that out into the universe.
What, JJ McCarthy going at number 2? No, but I'll just
don't.
pick at the 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks. 6 go in the first round because I know they traded for the MILF Hunter today, but I believe Denver is going to take Bo Nix in round 1.
They have to.
They do. You can't go into a season with Jarrett Stidham, Ben DiNucci, and Zach Wilson.
Yeah,
Like
Zach Wilson's your starter for
that is
sure.
borderline an expansion team. That's like an XFL level quarterback room, if we're being honest.
Have you
Like
seen them
there
uniforms?
are some
They look
teams.
like an
Oh,
XFL team.
sorry, UFL. I know it's the Yeah, especially with the new uniforms, it kind of have some Seattle Sea Dragon vibes. I mean,
Oh God.
I know Ben DiNucci played there. I mean, it is basically a borderline UFL quarterback room right now between
That's
DiNucci,
disgusting.
Stidham, and Wilson. Like a couple of those guys are probably a year or 2 removed from like being career UFL quarterbacks. I mean, DiNucci was in the XFL last year, so I think it's pretty plausible
Oh God.
that one of those guys or a couple of those guys go there. But yeah, I think there's 6 quarterbacks in the first round. That's my bold prediction.
Yeah, the more quarterbacks drafted in the first round. Exactly, because
That
that
makes
just
it better for us as the draft goes
exactly.
on.
Because we just get our pick a receiver at that point. I mean, they want to
True.
go quarterback crazy, let them. Just as long as Drake
Yeah,
May doesn't go to
100%.
Jaden
Connor, you
Daniels.
get the spotlight now. What is your bold take?
All
Or
right,
your
my
bold
my
prediction?
spotlight. All right. Do you want realistic or my brand of unrealistic? My
Yeah.
wild delusion.
Whatever floats the Connor's boat.
You know what? I am gonna give you guys a little bit of a wild delusionary take just
That's kind
because
of
I
what I was
want to.
hoping for.
I really want to just speak it into existence, and that is the Bills trade up into the third round and select Johnny Wilson. I just have a gut feeling about Johnny Wilson being that guy in this offense and on this team. I just have a gut feeling that Johnny Wilson is going to be a guy that someone is going to get, and then someone we're going to be looking back, a few years later. You know how people do all those redrafts? They're going to be like, "Oh yeah, they should have drafted Johnny Wilson in the first round." That's what I just have a gut feeling is going to happen with Johnny Wilson, and if
I
it's
mean,
us,
if
we
he can
will
work
not be
on
complaining.
if he can work on the consistency of his hands, you have a
That's all
guy
he's got to do.
who,
Just go hit the jug.
yeah, I mean, he's a
Joe
guy
Brady
who's
is going to make
like
him go hit the jugs.
a taller Mike Evans.
a, a gigantic version of Mike Evans. That's what
Yeah.
Johnny Wilson is. But that's that. I know it's very, very wild to say it because it's a long shot because the Bills don't have a third round pick. Thanks, NFL. But if
Right.
they could, I would just be so on board with it. As long as you get a receiver early to back up Johnny so Johnny doesn't have to be the guy because remember, Johnny was not the guy at FSU. Keon was. Jaheim Bell even had a fair share of targets too over Johnny Wilson. But man, Johnny Wilson in this offense would just be elite. All right, I've said my piece. Paul, go. Bold
All
prediction.
right. So, been having several predictions in my brain all day, and I'm just like, which one do I want to go with? And I think I've settled on one. My route was kind of at the beginning was like go the Ben route. Ben had the first four as as quarterbacks. I was thinking the first 10 as what as all offensive players. But I'm scrapping that. I'm going completely off the board here. I want to say the Bills make a historic move and trade for a non-draftable wide receiver. So whether it's AJ Brown, Brandon Ayuk, the Bills will trade for a wide receiver on
Justin
draft day.
Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson.
Anyone, whoever it is,
Higgins.
the Bills are
No.
going to trade for
Yes.
a wide receiver on draft
Oh
night.
man. Make it Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to T. Higgins, but man, cook, Paul. I like yours more than I like any of ours.
Yeah, I mean, mine is
Out of
kind
all
of
the, out
boring,
of
to
all
be
the
honest
bold,
with you.
yeah, I was gonna say, out of all the bold predictions, why is mine the most realistic all of a sudden? You two
Right?
are like going wild, and I'm like, I thought I was crazy. Y'all two are out here wilding, and I love it.
I just thought of it. It kind of felt like, do I want my bold prediction to be bold and right? Or would I mind kind of like laid back and right? I'm like, let's throw all the chips in the table. Even though the draft's not at Vegas, just use the Vegas analogy. Just throw all the chips in the table, and then it'd be right.
I hope that happens, Lauren.
Yeah.
If we can get Cortland Sutton, like he's a guy I've
Oh,
wanted
jeez.
the Bills to have. Honestly, since he was in college and he burned us last year, he had some. I mean, if you look at his highlights last year, look at all of Cortland Sutton's touchdowns. And someone made a video about like the degree of difficulty for each catch, and like there
Oh,
was
yeah.
5 like absolute nasty, like ridiculous catches made by Cortland Sutton, which probably have conversation to be the best.
You remember that one against the Bills?
Well, I mentioned that,
That
but what
one.
about the one against? I mean, he had a good one against Kansas City. The one against the
That's
Chargers
true.
was absolutely bonkers. That was like a 50-yard play, and there's
Mhm.
another one. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was Vegas. I mean, it probably was Vegas. Just knowing how that team is. But I mean, I would love Cortland Sutton. Like that would be a dream if we could add him to this offense. Like, let's go.
That would be a great
That would be
great
awesome. You
compliment
know what?
to
You know what? I'm gonna give Lauren something to think about because she said Cortland Sutton is one of her favorite players. Imagine trading and getting Cortland Sutton, a third round pick, and Javon Baker. I feel like she'd be over the moon. Like she is wax poetic about Javon Baker, and I'm just like, yeah, okay. Let's get hit. Let's trade up into the 3rd round to grab him. Get Cortland
then-
Sutton too. Feel like
Yeah.
Lauren would be in the streets yelling the Bills are going to the Super Bowl. So
Make that happen, I guess. Any way to make the Bills' chances of going to the Super Bowl higher. That's what the Bills, I guess, kind of like maybe the theme of this weekend. Picks that will make the Bills better and their chances of going to the Super Bowl higher.
Caitlin
That's the
Clark.
goal for this weekend for the Buffalo Bills. And as we kind of wrap up here, I do want to say this, that we've been doing this show for officially 1 year. And the growth of the show has always been my utmost priority, and it's always on my mind almost every day. How can we grow this show? And we are thankful for everyone who has commented in the chat right now. And anyone who is currently following the show, liking, responding to our tweets, retweeting, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are thankful for you, and I'm also thankful for you too. Wanting to be here on the show every week. And I'm also thankful for Jenna, as she does other things currently. Hopefully she can come back and be a consistent host on the show. I thank her for everything that she has contributed to the show as well. So
For sure.
just cannot wait for what the next year of this show could turn into be, as well as our first giveaway also comes up this week. If you want a Roman Doomsday jersey, sign up for the giveaway that's currently pinned to our Twitter. I believe the winner is announced on the 24th. So
Should be.
Get the retweets in, follow us, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Do all 3 of those things. You're in and you're good for a chance to win a Roman Doomsday jersey on
Manifest it. Put
on
that
Thursday
sucker
night,
into.
or
Put it out to the
whenever
universe,
we
Paul.
figure out the first round pick is.
Yep.
Whoever that is.
Put it
Roman
into the
Doomsday.
universe. And you know what the funniest
it.
thing is, Paul? When you were saying it earlier, we all know that Jenna just got tired of my hot takes. But anyway, no, I'm kidding. I had to say it. So, yeah, it's been so awesome. In the limited amount of time that I've been on the show, I've enjoyed every minute of it. I love being able to get the wild side out here because we all love it, it seems.
For sure.
All right.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just say thank you to all the viewers and everyone who subscribed, following. If you listen on I don't know, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, YouTube, Twitter, like
Wherever it is, we're thankful
wherever.
always.
And I'm glad we're able to make this thing work. And Connor, you've been a great addition. So hopefully we're able to just keep this thing going strong the next year.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what the goal is. A booth across from the Kingdom's Queens at the AFC Championship game where we're yelling at each other.
Or what about at the Super Bowl media row?
You know what?
Go,
Yeah,
Super Bowl.
Yeah. Well, I
We had the goal last year to get to Vegas. This year we're going to Radio Row.
The only reason I said
New
AFC Championship game is to throw out yelling at the Kingdom's Queens, but at the same time, yes, the Super Bowl would be incredible.
Let's do that.
Yeah, let's get there. Let's
That's
get to
the
the
goal.
Super Bowl.
There's the goal.
That's
One
a great
dream,
goal.
one team, one team, one dream, and that team would always be Go Bills.
Yeah, go Bills.
Go Bills.